Reg Fowler was a low-key athlete who let his outstanding skill speak for itself. Born in Peterborough in 1934, his abilities as a team player and leader and his athletic versatility came to the fore early. In high school, Reg played on 3 CASA football championship teams in 1948, 49, and 1950. He was also a member of 2 CASA basketball finalists at PCVS. Fowler quarterbacked the Peterborough Orphans to the Canadian Intermediate A football title in 1955. He also played on 6 City Softball League championship teams. And in 1959 and 1960, he was the starting first baseman with the Lakefield Charlatans when they won back-to-back Ontario Intermediate A softball championships. While coaching in the Church Hockey League, Reg's team reached the 1959 Pee Wee Championship final, then won it all in 1960. He also served 11 years as an executive member of the CGE Social and Athletic Association. Reg Fowler, a respected and ultimate team player. So you remember the last time you heard that?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, was it back at the induction ceremony in 1986?
Yes.
Well, that night, how clear is it for you if you look back?
It's pretty clear. I can't remember the other oh, I do. I remember some of the other inductees, but some of them weren't there because they had their family was representing them because the inductee was deceased.
Okay. And now, when you were at high school at PCVS, when you do go back through the area, it's not a school anymore, I guess. There are no more sports fields in the area. Do you recall where you would have been playing back then when you were in high school, when you were winning championships on the football field? Yeah.
We used to practice in front of the high school and the armories. Mm-hmm. It was a terrible field, but when something was going on at the armories, they took most of that over, and we had to practice. We had to run up to the oval, Nichols Oval, and practice up there. And we played most of our games up there as well, but we also played in the exhibition grounds and Riverside Ballpark.
So in football, you were a quarterback and halfback?
Yes, a halfback for all through high school, and my first 2 years with the Orphans, I was just a halfback. And then in 1955, one night the coach said to me, I want you to go over there with the alternate center and learn how to take the ball from him. You know, like a snap. Mm-hmm. And we had a couple of other guys there too that we were running some plays. And he never explained why he was having me do that. But anyway, I guess I was being groomed to be the backup quarterback, because the guy that was going to be the regular quarterback, Jimmy Hunter, came up from Ottawa. The team he played on down there disbanded, and he came to Peterborough to play. Well, Jim also played defense. And one day he got his bell rang, and suddenly I'm in the game as the quarterback with about 4 hours training. And I didn't have time to be concerned about it because I was right there and I had to make some decisions. So I just ran the basic stuff that I was comfortable with, and we won the game. And we won the next 7 games. So they left me there at quarterback. And Jim was just playing defense. And we ended up winning a national championship.
Where was the national championship played?
In Peterborough.
Wow.
At the exhibition grounds.
So do you remember the team that you guys played against?
Yes, Fort William Redskins.
Wow. And you were the quarterback?
Yes.
From, I guess, the midway point of the season all the way to a Canadian national championship.
Well, when I got pushed or went into the game, it might have even been an exhibition game. I'm not sure. It was very early in the season. Mm-hmm. We probably might have played 1 or 2 games into the season. It was very early in the season, anyway.
Now, were you a running quarterback? So there's a halfback on the defensive side of the game sometimes as well, in terms of that's a position on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. But I'm assuming you were the running back of a halfback on the offensive side of the ball.
I always played halfback in high school and with the orphans.
Now, when you did take over, were there nerves, or you said you didn't have much time to think about it, but going forward you just enjoyed it?
No. Well, that first game, I guess I built up some confidence, and the next game we played was in Oakville, and I remember we were there early, and we were walking around on the streets, just putting in some time before we went to get ready, and I was starting to. And I thinking about what was I going to do and so forth. So finally I put that all behind me, and I took the same approach as I did the first time. Just run the plays that I was really comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. And you had won 3 junior CASA championships prior to that as well.
At high school, yes.
Yeah. And how much did winning with that group help you guys win a national championship when it all came down to it?
Oh. A lot, not necessarily that game, but we learned. We had good coaches at high school, and we got good basics and fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of guys from former high school players that went and played for the orphans.
And in the notes that you gave us ahead of time, it said that a lot of the players were also coaches. Did you fall into
coaches? Yes.
Did you fall into that category?
No, I was never a coach. Well, I coached a hockey team there, a pee-wee hockey team, I guess it was, in the church league. But again, I wasn't a hockey player, and they got me to go and do it because nobody else would do it. So we ended up going to the finals one year, and we won it one year.
Yeah. So were you just motivating the players with not being a hockey player, or did you?
The kids knew more about hockey than I did. But I don't know. I guess I motivated them some way because we had a couple of really good players.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference.
And in terms of you, for who got you into the sport, Ira Dundas is the name?
Ira, yes. Ira was quite an athlete. He played all kinds of sports, but his best sport was lacrosse. And he just lived about a mile away from where I grew up. And I went to public school with his son and daughter. So I knew and Ira used to build a rink for the kids out behind his house every winter. So in the wintertime, we'd often be down there, kids from all over the neighborhood, skating on the pond and everything. Ira played senior hockey for the the Goodyear Tire Company in Toronto. And if it was senior hockey, it must have been a pretty good caliber of hockey.
Yeah. Now, where did you grow up in Peterborough?
When?
Where? In which neighborhood?
On a farm just on the northern outskirts of the city.
Okay, so I guess just the Selwyn border at the north end of Peterborough? If you're going in up Chemung, I guess?
No, do you know the center line?
Yeah.
Well, if you right there at the fire hall, if you turn left there, that's the third concession of Smith Township, and I lived about halfway up there.
Okay, so how did you find your way into town to go to PCVS? Was there a bus that ran? Did you?
No, I started off the first year riding my bicycle, and in the wintertime I used to ride the city bus as far as Langton Street, and then I'd walk up through the fields home.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody was going, like my dad or my mother with the car, I'd get a ride.
Now, how'd you get involved with softball then?
Well, when I was 13, I guess it was, the first summer I hadn't started the high school yet, but my mother said, somebody's phoned here, and I guess she said invited you to go to a softball practice up at Ross Harrison's farm, which was about 3 miles north. And she said, you're to meet another lad over at the public school if you want to go. And so we went.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first taste of any organized softball that I had. I didn't know anything. We played at the school, but the kids just made up the rules, and and it was crazy, you know. We'd get into big arguments, but anyway, that was where I started to learn softball. And the Harrison family, they had 4 boys, and they all played ball. They were older men than me. They were in their 20s, and we just played exhibition games, and had a lot of fun that summer. And I learned how to play like around. I used to think they had me at second base, and I stood right on the base. You know, you're not supposed to do that. Well, I learned how to. You know, they taught me a little bit there.
So you really did, I guess, go a good distance then with it. So once you learned how to play the game, how long did it take you to feel like you really had a grasp on things?
Oh, not too long. Couple of years, or a couple of games, I guess. Yeah, we used to play the Bell telephone because one of the Harrison boys worked there, and they had a ball team at the Bell, and we used to play various teams. So the more you play, the more you learn, and you see other people and see what they're doing, and you realize that that's what you should be doing.
So how old were you when you started playing?
13.
And you eventually won 2 provincial championships in softball after starting at 13 years old?
Oh, that was years later.
Yeah. So at the senior level then?
Intermediate.
Okay.
Yeah. In '59, I was, oh God, I was 23 or 24, I guess. Maybe older than that. Yes, I was. But one thing I should mention, in '59 and '60, we had a world-class pitcher. I'm serious, he was. He was so good that when he first came here, Oshawa had a team called the Tonys, and they used to play in a Sunday morning league in Toronto. They heard about Ray, and they invited him to go. They went to the World's Championship in Chicago. And Ray won 1 game and lost a game. He was world class. So
in Chicago, he was playing softball in Chicago.
Not me.
Oh no, yes,
just,
the pitcher.
Just Ray, the pitcher, yeah.
But where did these sports take you in terms of geographically in Canada? I know Winnipeg, Sudbury.
Winnipeg, Sudbury, Montreal, all over. Well, most of Ontario, North Bay. No, we went through North Bay on our way to Sudbury. But we played Point Anne, which is down near Belleville. Oshawa. When we won if you finished in a certain position in our own league, that determined whether or not you went into Ontario playdowns. And for 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, we ended up in Ontario playdowns. And we played in Oshawa and Belleville, Beamsville, which is down near St. Catharines, in Toronto, Kitchener, a lot of Ontario.
What are some of your favorite memories from being on the road with your teammates, your friends?
Well, in high school, I think I put it in my notes there. In 1949, we went to Port Colborne. I'd never heard of Port Colborne. And in those days, Colonial Bus used to have big orange buses. So the coach said, be at the school. We're going by bus. Be there at 7 o'clock. The bus leaves at 7. So it was pouring rain, and it rained all day. And when we got to the field in Port Colborne, there was seagulls floating on the puddles on the field.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I remember. And it was a cold, wet day. I think we beat them by 1 or 2 points. And when we left there to come home, of course, see, that would be probably in November, and it gets dark pretty early. I know it was dark when we left Port Colborne. We never got back to Peterborough till after 1 o'clock in the morning. And of course, that's a long drive to Port Colborne.
Yeah.
And what was I going to tell? Oh yes, when in 1959, 10 years later, when I was playing with the Charltons, we played in Sudbury, and we went up. There was Thanksgiving weekend, and I think we went on a Friday. We played on Saturday and Sunday, and we won both games. So and then we stayed over and came home on the Monday. But on Sunday it started to snow, and it was snowing pretty hard.
In Sudbury? No.
And they never stopped the game. I mean, it was dry enough you could keep playing, but it was that was a bit of a novelty, yeah.
Did you enjoy playing football in the snow, or was that softball?
That was softball.
Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, in the football, you get into some dirty weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the national championship game there, it had rained and frozen a bit earlier in the week, maybe on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then it snowed a bit on top, and so there was patches of ice on the field covered up by snow.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of miserable, the footing. Yeah. I remember one time playing at high school in Belleville, and it was wet, sloppy snow. Oh, it was terrible. And but that's what you get in football, you know, like that dirty weather.
In Canada, yeah.
Yeah.
Canadian football is going to be, it's going to be gritty, I guess we'd have to say. Now,
I'm not sure there's no footballs this year. CFL, is that what you mean?
oh well, yeah. There's no football being played. There are no sports being played right now, really.
No,
right? Yes.
no.
But Canadian outdoor sports, especially in the fall, like football, traditionally, that's going
Yes.
to be difficult. And you played rugby as well.
Well, see, when I started to play football, they called it rugby football.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the rugby was dropped and we just called it football. Well, now the kids are starting to play rugby again.
Yes.
But it's nothing like the game that I learned to play at high school.
I did see the pictures. So in the Sports Hall of Fame, they have the Peterborough Orphans photos
Yes.
from the 50s. And the ball looks nothing like a football would now. Your equipment looks nothing like football equipment would now. What were the differences?
Well, see, I don't think the rugby players now, they don't wear any equipment.
No, they don't. No.
There must be a lot of injuries.
Surprisingly, not as many as football and rugby, I would guess.
Oh, I've never really seen a game, but when I started to play, they called it rugby.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wondered about that because the game that I learned to play we eventually called it football, and we never talked about rugby or anything. I don't know really how they play that game.
Well, just no forward passes in rugby.
None?
None, no, unless you kick the ball.
Yes.
But
I watched an Australian.
Aussie rules football?
Yes.
Oh, nobody understands that. No.
Is that not like rugby?
It's a variation of rugby. It's a different version. I don't personally understand it. I've seen it on TV as well, but you'd have to take a little bit of time and sit down and explain it to me. Just like the way that you guys played football, though, right? Like the ball you guys had in those photos is different than what you would see in a CFL football now.
No, not really.
No, not really. No.
No.
Not bigger or.
No, but Paul Wilson, who's a member of the Hall.
Yeah.
He played. I guess it was rugger. The ball that he's donated one to the Hall is totally different than a football. I mean, it's generally the same shape, but it's very blunt on the ends, and it's fatter this way.
Yeah.
Like the football that we used to play with is more pointed.
Yep.
And it's made for throwing, more so than a rugger ball or rugby ball.
Now you guys didn't wear face masks.
No,
when you
well, some of the linemen they were coming out. They started out with a single bar here, and some of the backfielders wore one of those single bars. But now, if you see them, there's like a cage.
Yeah.
If you watch the NFL or the CFL, they got a real like a goaltender or a catcher's mask or something, you know.
So the running style as a halfback, how often were you getting hit in the face when you were running? Like how bad was that? Just trying to go through the sea of arms and bodies as you're trying to cut through a hole in the offensive line or sprint to the outside. Were high tackles something that you encountered a lot? Was it bad?
I don't remember getting hit in the face. I spent a week in the hospital once, But that was a lower back injury.
Okay.
And when I was playing quarterback, they give the quarterback now, they give him a lot more, like guys would hit you from behind, the ball, the play would be gone. And guys coming in late, they'd run up and knock you flat, you know, from behind. Now, if the referee sees that, they get penalized. They're not supposed to do that. But in those days, that stuff, geez, I got, anyway.
You got hit hard a lot of times.
A lot of times, yeah. I can understand why Jimmy Hunter ended up with a, well, he probably had a concussion.
Yeah.
And the poor guy's got dementia now, but he got hit a lot of hard a lot of times too.
Now you fell in love with football at a younger age than other sports.
Well, I think I said in my notes, this lad used to work on Saturdays for my dad, and he played. And I went to a couple of his games, like before I even got to high school. And I kind of enjoyed it, and I thought I'm going to try that when I get to high school, and then that's where it all started.
Do you remember your first experience playing organized football? I know you remember your first softball experience.
Well, no, our coach was also the math teacher. He was a disciplinarian, if that's the right word. Tough guy. Tough, you know, a hard guy to please. And we were playing out, or practicing out in front of the school. And there was a lot of grass, or gravel there, and not much grass. I picked up the base off a light bulb one time that was out there. I think one time it might have been a garbage dump. And anyway, you'd have two linemen there, and they wanted you to go through between the linemen. Yeah. And I'm out there in a pair of running shoes. You don't get much traction with a pair of running shoes. That's when I learned that I had to get a pair of cleats. And he'd be right on your tail, you know. If you didn't make it through there, he'd be on your case, you know. And I remember getting hit in the arm there one time. I don't know how it ever happened, but I thought it broke my arm. I didn't, but it felt like it. And that's how they separate the men from the boys, I guess. I don't know, in that game.
Were you a big running back? Were you small for your?
I was small, yeah. I probably weighed at the most in high school, probably 150, maybe 160. Yeah. But we had some good players. We had the 1949 team. We played we scrimmaged with the seniors one night at Nichols Oval. Now I don't know how who idea this was, but the seniors couldn't stop us. And they couldn't run against us. And the coach, the seniors coach, would give them really quite a talking to. He said, if you guys can't beat these juniors tonight, what's going to happen on Saturday? That's how good a team we had. And in those days, there was a rule that when you turned 17 by a certain date, you had to play senior football. Well, we had about 5 big guys that were not 17 yet. They might have been, but they were before the date, or maybe there was after the date. Anyway, they were still eligible to play junior. We had a good team.
Do you remember what the score was, or did you end up winning that game against the seniors?
No, we only scrimmaged for about 20 minutes, and then they stopped it.
Before it got out of hand.
The junior coach, our coach, was standing over at the side, and he was grinning from ear to ear. He didn't say anything, but I think he was enjoying it, you know.
How confident of a team was that group after that? Your group, how confident did you feel after beating the seniors in the scrimmage?
Oh, I think it helped us a lot. We won that's where did we play that year? The CASA final was probably in Peterborough. I can't remember. But we had a good team. Now, the following year we had a pretty good team too, but all those guys that were still at junior, the big guys, they went to the senior team the next year.
Yeah. And this when you were in your first year in high school at this point?
No, it would be my second.
Second year?
No, my third, I guess. I didn't play in 47, 48, 49, and 50. Yes. Yeah, that. I was about, I was 14, I guess, in 48, yes. 15 and 59, or 49, and 16 and 19.
Now you also played basketball?
Yeah, but I wasn't a good basketball. I didn't, in the big games, I didn't get off the bench.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
were you, I'm guessing you were a guard of some sort in basketball?
Yes. See, that's another game. They've changed it a lot.
Yeah.
And I like to watch the pros, but I was a guard. And then in those days, we had 2 forwards out there and 2 guards in the center. And I guess we'd call it a zone. Now I think it's more man-to-man.
Yeah. It's tough to play a zone defense, I guess.
Those big guys in the pros amaze me how quick they are. Gee. Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty incredible. When you look back at it all, what sticks out to you the most? What is the strongest sports memory you have?
Well, the championships, I mean, it's nice to win, but they were good games too. Like in that national football game, that was the best 2 intermediate teams in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of it, I mean, somebody would argue that, but we ended up in that game, so you have to consider that they were the 2 best teams in Canada at that level. And the same with softball. Like, to qualify for the provincial final in softball, we must have went through 6 or 7 playoff series. And again, by the time you get there, you got to consider that you're one of the best teams in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And but with Ray Judd was an American. He came here as a Mormon missionary. He was a world-class pitcher and extremely modest. And we played against, not the first time, a guy from Detroit that was playing in Sudbury, Metro Zurich. Well, the following year, we ended up playing against him in Peterborough for the final. And I can't remember whether that series was 2 games or 3. I think we won 1, they won 1, and we won the 3rd. 2 of the best pitchers in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And the paper said there was about 3,000 people at the ballpark. I know they were jammed in there.
In Peterborough?
Yes.
So that would have been in East City, I assume?
East City Bowl, yes.
Wow.
It has changed now. There's not as many seats there. They've taken away a lot of the bleachers.
Mm-hmm.
So more people could get in there. But the first year Ray was here in 1955, the team I played on, we didn't get to the playoffs. And Lakefield and East City, they were called, were in the finals. And the park over there was just jammed. And my girlfriend and I went over and sat. We had to sit in the rock garden. There's a rock garden as you walk off the bridge. If you look down, I think the rock garden is still there. And that's where we were sitting at this game. And people started sitting on the edge of the field out to the foul ball lines.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept creeping out, and they stopped the game a couple of times and made those people get back because they were on the playing field. That's how big the crowd was.
So that you were a spectator for that one.
Yes.
But did you play? You played in front of crowds that size as well in Peterborough?
Not at that point, but later on.
What was it like to play in front of that many people?
Well, when you get into the game, you don't pay much attention. At least I didn't. I don't think a lot of guys paid much attention to the crowd because you get involved in the game and you're thinking about what you should be doing and so forth. You know, so you don't. That's the way it was for me anyway.
Visually, do you remember just looking out like to me the thought of it is quite astounding. Like you really only see crowds like that for say a Pete's game, a Lakers game, or maybe the lacrosse world championship that was in Peterborough last year, you don't see crowds like that for amateur sport very often. But
No.
Was that commonplace?
I think it was. Like for the national football final that we played in, the paper said that there was 3,500 or something there, but see, the exhibition grounds, the grandstand was still there, and a lot of those people were on the grandstand, and they were a fair distance across the racetrack from the playing field. And again, you get thinking about the game, you don't pay much attention to what the crowd's doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It honestly seems incredible that many people are at a local sporting event. It must have been nice to see everybody come together for something like that.
Yes. Well, what I remember too about that, when the game was over, everybody's on the field. Everybody, you know. And that was probably kind of shocking too, you know. My dad was there and he might have seen one football game in his life. And but that was kind of nice, you know. Then they took us uptown on the fire truck. And they did that for the softball too one year when we won over here in 1960.
Yeah. So you got a parade through town?
Down George Street in a fire truck. Nice.
Nice. Yeah. So did the whole team get piled on top of the fire truck?
Yeah, I think everybody that could get on we were sitting on top of each other. I think it was a ladder truck or something. And that was kind of fun too.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys get recognized around town after the win?
Well, there was a family here, Mr. McGillis, who owned the McGillis Hotel on Charlotte Street. It's now called, I think they call it the White House or something.
Okay, yeah.
And he supported the orphans a lot. And he held a party for us out at the, not that night, no, it was, that was a Saturday. I don't think it was that night. It might have been that night, out at the Peterborough Golf and Country Club. A big party, like a banquet type of thing. And players brought their girlfriends and wives and so on. And there was quite a few dignitaries there, like council people and so on. That was very nice. And then later on, the city gave us a banquet, and we held it at the old Club Aragon, which is, the building is still there. I don't know what they call it now. But that was, that picture, if you saw the picture at the Sports Hall of Fame, that's where that was taken. We had a lot of good players there. We had guys that had some pro experience. And we had a good team.
So there were guys on the team that played in the CFL?
Yes, briefly. Well, I can think of several guys that were invited to orphans, or not orphans, Argonaut camps. And one guy, Boyd Henry, played a few games with them. Jimmy Lorino was from Oshawa, and he came to play with us. He played for the Hamilton. They had a team in Hamilton at one time called the Tiger Cats and another team called the Wildcats. I think the Wildcats were a junior team.
Okay.
Now, Jim played for one or the other. I'm not sure he played the whole season, but part of it.
Okay.
And Floyd Ouellette was another guy that had several tryouts with the Argonauts. Stan Facendi was a guy that I played junior football with, and he was invited to the Tiger Cats camp. Another guy, Whitmore. And then we had some guys that had played at Queens, you know, college football, which was pretty good football in those days. Joe Berthelot and Bill Huntley, and we had some good players.
Now, you guys won that championship together, and there aren't many things that'll bring you together more than winning with your friends. Over the next few decades, do you guys still keep in touch as everybody
There's
around
a group of us, about 10 of us, and that was started by Bus Jensen, who I played with at high school. He was older than me, But it must probably 10 years ago, he phoned up a bunch of guys, 8 or 10 of us, and we got together for lunch once a month, the first Friday in the month. Well, we've lost several people out of that group. And the latest one was about a year ago. And Bus has also moved to Ottawa, or Carp, which is just outside of Ottawa. And he's got 2 boys that live down in Ottawa, so they wanted Bus and his wife to be closer to them. Because Bus is he's older than I am, and I'm 86. And anyway, and then because of this virus thing, that group is kind of, it hasn't fallen apart, but if this virus thing gets cleared up, we're going to get back together again.
Yeah, well, I absolutely hope that happens soon. Yeah. And your son played football as well.
Yes.
Right? And he has children, and for you to see the legacy of sports continue through them, what's that mean?
Chris played at high school football at Adam Scott. When he was a junior, he got a kidney injury, and he couldn't play that. After that, he got a ruptured kidney. So he couldn't finish that year. Well, the next year, he was going to be a senior, and he made the team. And they won a Costa championship. He was a good player. And he got a letter inviting him to go to Waterloo Lutheran, I think it was. They had a college team, but he didn't go there. Now his 2 boys they don't play football, but they played hockey. And James, the youngest boy, he's midget, I think now. But again, there's no hockey, I guess, this year. I don't think.
Could you imagine having sports taken away from you when you were that age, 15, 16 years old? Can you imagine?
It kept me in high school.
Yeah.
And my mother said, you have to go till you're 16. And that was a law anyway. I didn't know that. But she just said, you have to go to high school. And my dad, he couldn't have cared less because, you know, growing up on a farm, the work comes first. And if there was work to be done, you didn't go to school. That happened to a lot of guys. Didn't happen to me. But my mother was insistent about getting some education. And there was something else I was going to tell you, and now I've forgotten. Anyway, it kept me in school, the sports.
It's pretty wild to think about now that,
yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people that do go to play college sports. That's the only reason why they're going to go there and get an education, is to play the sport, I guess. But the decision, I guess, for families back then was the farm or school. And you said that a lot of people weren't able to go to school because they had to go work on the farm. And I guess, are you grateful for your mother's emphasis to make sure you went to school?
Well, how that all came to light, there's a book was written by a group of people in 1967 about Peterborough County. And I saw some pictures in there and see some of the boys were grown up men. And I said to somebody, I said, those guys must have been awful stupid, or, you know, what were they doing in public school at that age? And it might have been my mother said, well, in those days, when those kids were going to school, if there was work to be done at home, the boys were kept home. They didn't go to school. The work was more important. And so consequently, they were 18, 19 years old before they finished public school. And when you think about it, that's a good possibility. But now what do they call them? The truant officer wouldn't allow that. The truant officer used to get after you didn't go to school until you were 16.
Wow. And so then, were there a lot of people that had to sacrifice sports for work, I'd imagine?
I often wondered about that, yeah. It probably happened, but I don't know of any examples.
So you were a lucky one in that regard, where you got to play at will. Well,
I remember one morning we used to play against our first junior football game and the seniors. One of the coaches, Bev Goulding, he grew up in Toronto. For years, 2 or 3 years, we played an exhibition game before, at the start of the season, junior and football. 2 teams from Riverdale or Riverside Collegiate in Toronto. They had good teams. Sometimes we beat them, sometimes we didn't. And one morning we were thrashing. I don't know if you know what thrashing is, but
no.
The grain goes in the barn.
Oh, okay.
And then they bring, a guy comes with a mill, and they have a tractor outside that drives the mill with a belt, big long belt. And I said to my dad, I'm supposed to be down at the school at 12 or 12:30. Well, he said, we're going to be thrashing on Saturday morning. I'll need you till noon hour. And you didn't argue. And my dad was pretty lenient though, but anyway, it was awful dusty too in the barn. Because the grain's in there maybe for a month. You start cutting the grain and bringing it into the barn in August, and this might have been late October, early November. It was probably about mid-October. Anyway, it was dusty and dirty, and I think I was carrying grain. So about 11:45, I said to my dad, "Can I go now?" And he said, "Yeah, you can go now." So I had to tear down to the house and get cleaned up and jump on the bike, and away I went. And I remember thinking on the way in, on the bike, if I told some of the guys on the team what I'd been doing, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. There was a couple of guys on the team that grew up on farms too. They would know, but the rest of them wouldn't even know what I was talking about.
How tired were you going to a game after working all morning and then riding your bike, what, 10 kilometers to the field?
It was about 3 miles. Well, you know where PCVS is.
Yeah.
And I think it was about, from our farm, it was about 3 miles to where City Hall is now, and when that's right across the park from from PCVS.
So you were tired. I'm assuming you were tired from working all morning.
Well, it probably was, but I never thought about that. You know, you get thinking about the game, and you don't think about those things. I know I didn't have to be rocked to sleep at night anyway.
And I'm guessing you pedaled a little bit faster down to the field than you did on the way home.
Yeah, it was all sort of downhill.
Yeah.
On the way into town, but going the other way, it's a little harder because you're going up grade, a lot of it.
Yeah, so that'll make sleeping at night quite easy. Did you have siblings?
No, I had a sister that was a younger sister, but she died when she was 6 months old. Okay. So I was an only child really. But I had cousins that lived on both sides. 2 cousins lived on the farm to the west of us, and 3 cousins that lived on the farm to the east of us.
How much time did you how much time did you spend just playing with them in terms of football, basketball, softball?
No, we never played anything like that. I don't know what we did. We probably played a bit of ball, but you'd say I never had a softball. And even at public school, we had 1 softball, 1 bat, and 1 glove. And we used to get the ball out. I remember one summer, and the grass was never cut, and the ball got so wet early in the morning. And anyway, the stitches started to go in it. And the teacher said, "Well, you'll have to wait till I have to talk to the school board." There was 3 trustees or something, I think. She said, "I'll have to go to them for a new ball." And I remember her saying the ball cost 60 cents. And we never had a ball for about 3 weeks. 60 cents. And, we brought our own pencils and rubbers and rulers and all that stuff. Now all that stuff is supplied.
The ball must have gotten heavy.
Oh, it
soaking
was. And I remember it being like slippery.
Yeah.
And then the leather was so wet it started to expand a bit, and it was sloppy on the...
Not many hits going into the outfield.
No.
No.
Anyway, it was good.
Yeah, no, it sounds like fun no matter what, right? Everybody's playing with the same ball and the same bat, then it's all level playing field.
We used to have a rule, if you came into the game, you had to start in the outfield. and every time there was an out, you moved up one spot. So you went through the 3 outfield spots, and finally then third base, second base, shortstop, I guess, second base, first base, and then pitcher and catcher before you got to bat. So lots of times you wouldn't never get to bat, you know, unless you played at recess. We used to do that too, but noon hour was an hour I guess. And you might get up to bat by noon hour, or in a noon hour session.
So back in those days, I'm guessing you had no thought of one day being in the Peterborough and District Sports Hall of Fame. The Peterborough and District Sports Hall of Fame may not have existed at that point in time.
No.
No, okay. So
a group of guys got together in the late 70s. Neil Thompson, who if you haven't interviewed him, you probably will. He was part of that group. And that's how it got started. It was Jack Carpenter, who came here from Toronto. I think he came up with the idea, and it was going to be lacrosse. And then somebody said, well, why not all sports? And if you have a program from the hall, from the inductees dinner, there's a blurb in there about how it all started. That's a good description of how it got together. And then they formed a group to raise some money, and that group, including Neil, they raised something around $70,000 to get the building put up.
Wow. They
worked hard at it.
Now, you were on the board until last year?
No, I didn't come on board until about the winter of 94, 95.
Then you retired last year, or you stepped down last year?
About a month ago.
Oh, about a month ago,
yeah.
Okay. So your time on the board, how enjoyable was that? Seeing everybody with similar experiences to you coming through and being honored?
Yeah, it was good. We had a great group of people, and everybody got along together, and our car draw and our golf tournament has been great fundraisers for us. And everybody worked hard at that, and keeping the place clean and keeping the floors clean and doing displays and all that.
And hanging out drinking coffee.
Pardon?
And hanging out drinking coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, that one of our chairmen used to say that's the most important thing of the day, the coffee break.
As you see it grow, and it's something that you were there pretty much at the start of. You were inducted in 1986, but
96.
Or 19. Okay, so for the amount of time that you've been in, you've still seen the Hall of Fame grow. How much has that meant to you?
Oh, it's very satisfying. Yes. I mean, well, I knew most of the people that I was on the board of directors. I knew them before. I didn't know them all, but they're a good group of people, and one of the gratifying things for me was the compliments we got from visitors, and that was a nice feeling too, you know, because to know you had a little bit part to play in it all. One time there was a tournament, a midget tournament, I think, on in the Memorial Center, and we were open, and there was people come in there, a couple I remember saying, "We're from Ottawa. We don't have anything like this in Ottawa." And you know, that was nice. And then when the junior hockey teams were in there, often the coaches or managers would be in our place walking through, and you'd get some nice compliments from them, those people too.
And has your family been through?
Yes, I think so. Yes. Well, on the night of my induction, they were there, and my parents weren't. They were gone by that time, but they would have enjoyed it too.
So is that something else that you find satisfying, seeing other inductees maybe get a chance to show their families what they have in the Hall of Fame?
Yes. We just lost a good member, Gus Leonard. He was 97 when he passed away, and his family were very supportive of Gus. And the family doesn't live near here. one girl lives down near Belleville. There's another girl who lives in, where does she live? Brockville, I guess. And his son is out in, Canmore.
Mm-hmm.
But those people, when they were here on vacation, they usually came in the hall. Gus was a great guy. He was a great hockey player. And we had a lot of nice friends there, and people, to hear the stories around a coffee break was good too.
And did you ever play lacrosse?
No.
No?
Ira gave me a stick one time. Well, there was 3 or 4 of us there. He tried to get us involved in lacrosse. I could never keep the ball in the stick. Every time I went to throw it, the ball would fall out. But now kids start when they're 4 years old.
In Peterborough, absolutely, yeah.
It's no wonder they're as good as they are, you know. If you've been to a lacrosse game, you see what they do between periods.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, there's little kids out there, and they've all got lacrosse sticks. And some of those games, you need to start young to be as good as they are.
So people weren't starting that young in really any sport when you were 4 or 5?
Well, some were. See, they had a lacrosse school at Miller Bowl. Miller Bowl used to be where the Market Plaza is now on George Street.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture in there, used to be a picture in the hall of a group that went to the lacrosse school. And some of them they weren't 4 years old, but they were 7 or 8 years old, you know. They started pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Do you wish that you had gotten started in lacrosse? Are you happy with?
Well, I would have probably played. My cousins, they had sticks. They didn't play any organized lacrosse, but they had sticks. But I had nobody to play with, and I didn't know much about lacrosse.
Yeah.
I used to go to the games sometimes at Miller Bowl, but I had lots to do with the ball, the softball, you know, and it kept me busy.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you compare your experiences playing sports, coaching sports, which you did a little bit of, and then, I guess, just being around sports with your efforts with the Hall of Fame, what to you is, what do you say is the most important thing? What did you enjoy the most?
Oh, the satisfaction of winning and being able to participate. I didn't always play on a winning team, but I enjoyed the experience. The first year I played in the City League, we went down to Kingston Penn and played in there, which wasn't a first. Other teams had been there before us. That was quite an experience. And anyway.
Were inmates watching?
Pardon?
At Kingston Penitentiary?
Yes.
So were inmates watching you guys play?
We played against the inmates.
Oh.
They had some good ball players.
Okay.
And,
in softball or football?
Softball.
Okay. And
in 1955, when we were there, I think I was there twice that summer. Anyway, in the southeast corner that's where their ball field was.
Mm-hmm.
No grass, like gravel.
Okay.
And they had bleachers and a stand with wires all around, you know, and a batting cage. And they had an in-house rule, and anybody that hit one out over the wall, and the wall was at least 35 feet high, they got a package of cigarettes or a carton, I'm not sure which. They had a shortstop that hit 2 out that day, when the first day I was there.
Uh-huh.
They had some good ball players. And that was quite an experience, just going in through the front there, and when they closed those big doors and you clank, you know.
Yes.
It was quite a feeling.
How did that come to be? How did you end up playing against a penitentiary team?
Well, see, other teams had been there before, and there was a guy in Peterborough, an older man, Rube Brady was his name, and I don't know whether he had some friends in there or not, but he organized the first team that I went there. I've got a picture of that team. And Then we went, one time we played in Collins Bay, which is a few miles west of where Kingston Pen was. And it was similar. They didn't have as good a ball team. I think we beat them. But they didn't like to get beat either. Oh, the first time I was there, I was in the on-deck. They had an on-deck circle, so I'm in the on-deck circle, and the inmates, there was the wire fence there to keep the balls from going into the stands. There's a guy on the other, and I hear him call my name, and I looked around. It was a guy from Peterborough.
Oh, he's in jail there.
And I knew he had gotten into trouble, but I didn't know he was in there.
Yeah. Was it, like, I'm just thinking, imagining in my head that it's going to be intimidating as anything to be playing in front of the inmates. I don't know, what was the atmosphere like?
I didn't feel that way, but maybe some guys did. I don't know. Again, when you get wrapped up in the game, you don't think about stuff like that too much.
Just going through those gates and hearing the doors closed would have been an experience.
I'll tell you what intimidated, I guess it was intimidation. They'd had a riot there the year before, and there was a building there that had been, there was the walls, the outside walls of it were 4 or 5 feet high. And then there was just a cement floor, and they had a bunch of guys there lifting weights. There must have been 8 guys there lifting weights. And they had some other stuff there, like weight training stuff. And some of those guys had amazing physiques, you know, because that's all they had to do, I guess, when they had free time. And that was a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But it was a place that I wouldn't want to be in.
No.
It was nice being able to leave it in the afternoon and go home.
I would imagine so. Very wild, actually, that even happened. It's very interesting that even happened. Well, I guess lastly, what would you like your sports legacy to be? What do you believe it is?
My legacy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Play hard and play fair, I guess.
That's a pretty good one. Well,
yeah, and enjoy it. Try to enjoy it.
I think that's a good message for anybody getting involved with sports.
Yes, I think so.
Well, Reg, thank you so much for sitting down, talking to us. Went by faster than you'd imagine, I think.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.